Hi, this is Kirk, the bariatric carnivore, and I am ecstatic because I finally got deprescribed my last medication that I had after having my heart attack back in November. And, I had, for those of you who aren't aware of it, I had open heart surgery, had a quadruple bypass and a new valve put in. And I am so glad to be able to finally get off this thing called a beta blocker. And this particular medication I look at like a crutch. If you break your leg for a certain period of time, you do need to use a crutch to help you to take some of that strain off the leg so the leg can heal. Well, same thing happens when you've had open heart surgery. You've put a lot of strain on your heart. There's new arteries that are grafting themselves in. You're trying to make it as healthy as possible, and taking additional strain off the heart for a period of time makes sense. So I didn't want to take them, but I did because frankly I wanted to take that extra strain off the heart, and that's what the doctor recommended. So I did for that period of time, and I got a whole host of side effects. And that's the thing, you got to realize that there's no free lunch. Whenever you're taking a prescription medication, you're going to get some side effects, and I did. I've been coughing like I did when I smoked. My nose would suddenly gush for no real apparent reason. It's lowering your heart rate, which creates fatigue and a little lightheadedness from time to time. There's those downsides, but the big one to me was the weight. And yes, you will notice if you Google beta blockers, they will say, yes, you're going to probably gain a couple of pounds. Okay, and that's fine. The problem is you can't lose anything either. So I gained a couple of pounds, but I also could not lose any of the extra weight that I put on while I was going through heart failure and all the other things that happened beforehand. And that extra 10, 15 or so pounds gets old after a while. And I can't wait to see what happens after I wean off of these things. But I bring this up because really, frankly, it surprises me, but I shouldn't be shocked. But you would think that a heart hospital and a heart guy who prescribes beta blockers and stuff like that all the time would have like kind of a cheat sheet on how to wean yourself off of them. And no, they don't. Their only advice was, cut the dose in half over a week and then quit taking them, and then monitor your pulse and your blood pressure and make sure they don't go really nuts. And that was basically it. And that's not surprising, because ask any doctors that you know how many classes they had in medical school on the deprescription of drugs. And you're going to hear crickets, because they don't teach that in medical school. What they teach in medical school is, okay, if somebody presents with this, you give them this drug, and they don't talk about how to get people off of them, particularly long-term maintenance type drugs. And this becomes problematic for a couple of different groups in particular that I'm aware of. One of them are type 2 diabetics. When they switch to a low-carb diet and they're on maybe, not only insulin, but maybe a couple of other medications that help with their blood sugar regulation, and they suddenly switch to a low-carb diet where they are no longer elevating their blood glucose level, and if they keep taking their medications as if they were eating a standard American diet, they can have serious problems. Their blood sugar could really go out of whack fast. So this is not something that you just want to play with by yourself. You need a trusted guide. But frankly, the people that prescribed you all that medication probably aren't the people you need to go to. You need to probably utilize resources like Rivero and find trusted doctors that can help you during a transition period, particularly at the beginning, because it's pretty, from what I understand, it can be a pretty quick transition, and you have to really carefully monitor your blood sugars and your insulin levels, because that's going to change dramatically with the dietary shift. So utilize, the resources, and that's one of the cool things that we live in. We live in an era when we can do a lot of telemedicine and telecommunication to help you and give you the best advice you can get as far as getting off those type of medications when you're making a lifestyle change. But there's another class of medications that we often don't think about as being problematic. And if you ask, your family physician is the person that prescribes most of antidepressants in this country. It's not psychiatrists or psychologists, but family physicians that are prescribing a lot of the antidepressant medications. And they will look at their little book and it says there's no downside if you just discontinue taking it. And that's not true, because these drugs were only tested for a few months. And if you only took an antidepressant for a few months and you just suddenly quit, it's generally, there's no withdrawal to it. But most people are taking antidepressants for years, and there's a sizable amount of anecdotal evidence and stories of people that have had serious issues when they discontinue taking antidepressant medications after years of use. They were not tested for that. And if you do that, there's a weaning process. Thankfully, there are doctors out there that have online help and telemedicine that can help you and help put together a really good program for you on how to wean off those medications safely. And I bring this up because I'm one of those people that didn't do it right. About 6 years ago, I kind of got fed up with the medical establishment and just quit going and quit refilling my prescriptions. And I was on like 10 medications at that particular time. And I just cold turkeyed quit taking the antidepressant. And it's not like, a cocaine withdrawal or a heroin withdrawal or something like that. You don't go through those type of withdrawals, but man, it was really strange mentally. And, if I had known now what I know, knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have just withdrew. I would have, done a taper under supervision, but I didn't know. So, don't go through that type of pain, and it can get really extreme depending on what you're taking and how long you've been taking it. And you need some help, you need some guidance, you need people that know what the heck they're doing. It's possible to do. It's possible to get off medications, but it does require some expertise. So this afternoon I will be Googling on how to safely get off beta blockers and make sure that, if I need any additional support, calling a telehealth specialist on how to get off these meds. But you don't get that from your doc. Sorry, odds are they're not going to know how to do it safely. Realize that, certain classes of medications, sudden withdrawal can be a problem. And the medical establishment just doesn't know how to do it all that well. That's not what they're trained to do. But there are specialists that know how to do it. Because look, in this fight for our health, we are all alone in this. But we can all be alone in this together. Share whatever knowledge you've got. If you've had a medication that you've come off of that created some serious whacked out problems for you, please put it in the note in the comments. What did you do about it? Who did you talk to? The more resources people have, that's always very helpful. You might help somebody out that really is going through some serious withdrawals. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. I try to put out a couple of messages each week. If you like this message, please hit like and subscribe. Join this channel of other like-minded folks. I will talk to you again soon.